Well, I'm going to try something novel. I don't think anybody's tried on YouTube. Obviously, I'll be proven to be wrong. First of all, notice my Walmart t-shirt. Please cancel my subscription to your issues. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to talk about what I see as the top 16 Senate races in the country, and I'm going to set up replies or comments for all 16 of them and give each of you both an opportunity and a request to weigh in on any of these. And what I'd ask you to do is weigh in on any in which you feel you have some insight, expertise, preferential understanding, that you either live there in that state, you have lived there in that state, or you have friends or family that live in the state that give you insight. But tell me in those comments and notes why this election is either the same as you expect or the same as the polls will give, knowing full well that the polls are skewed and inaccurate. We're going to use them as a launch point. They're just the launch point, okay? That's not the answer. I'm not trying to say that things will happen the way the polls are. As a matter of fact, what I'm asking you is, tell me why either the polls reference what is really going on or why the polls are absolutely terribly off. And it has to do with the increase in voting, the increase in interest, what you see by signage, what you see by advertising. I'd like to know what insiders, that is, people who live in the various states, have to say about it. I can read about what the New York Times thinks. I can look at all these polls, inside elections, the 270, the 538. I can look at the early vote returns in a bunch of the states, including about 22 of them. But there are trends like the increased early voting and the absentee voting that are natural trends that have been ongoing for about 6 or 8 years, and that it is hard to say, well, the trend toward increased voting is simply that we want one person to win or the other, or is it just simply convenience and the fact that the states are making it easier? So let me run through these quickly. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on them. I'm going to try to remember to tell you who the Republican is and who the Democrat is, and give you what I consider to be the latest information on each of these races, but I'm not going to spend a lot of time on them. So we've got Arizona. It's Marcia McSally, the Republican, versus Kirsten Sinema, or Enema, as Schweikert likes to call her. There's a Project Veritas hit on Sinema this last week showing that she is, kind of a stealth candidate, that she's way more liberal, way more progressive. Progressive is the dirty word, not liberal. Way more progressive than she'd like to tell the Arizona voters. She's also called the Arizona voters basically deplorables, and that this is a drug test as opposed to a legitimate state. So the polls show McSally up by 2, Sinema up by 4, McSally up by 2. The voting is way up, and it looks like, according to Schweikert and the state of Arizona, that the Republicans are outpolling the Democrats by 60 or 70,000, and that will probably hold through the weekend. Next, Florida. This is Rick Scott, the Republican challenger and former governor, and Bill Nelson, who is the incumbent Democrat. There was a Project Veritas hit on Gillum. I'm wondering whether or not that is going to wash or splash over into the Nelson Scott race. Tell me if you're in Florida. The polls show anywhere from Scott, the Republican, ahead a couple, to Nelson ahead by 2 to 5. There's lots of early voting. What Schweikert tells me, and from his sources, is that there is lots of early voting, that it's up 160 or 70,000, that the Panhandle may be 5,000 or 6,000 down, but that it's closing the gap, and that there will be polls open for the Panhandle folks this weekend, and that should get it a lot closer. Next, Indiana. This is Joe Donnelly versus Mike Braun. Joe Donnelly is the incumbent Democrat. Mike Braun is the challenging Republican. This is another Project Veritas. There was a hit done on Donnelly and Donnelly's wife talking about how liberal her husband is and the fact that he's hiding that. Most of the polls have showed Donnelly with the lead, although at times it zeros. Donnelly appears to be 5 to 7 ahead in the polls. Okay, let me say this one more time, because you do it every time. Somebody has to put under, these polls are crap, they're no good at all. Well, no, they won't predict the outcome, but what they will tell us is, to some extent, like watching a horse race from 20 miles away, they'll give you some kind of a broad indicator of whether somebody's leading or not, if there are a bunch of polls, okay? Just leave it at that. Michigan is Democrat incumbent Debbie Stabenow versus John James. This poll was absolutely solid, dead Stabenow until the last 3 months. And John James who is a businessman, younger, articulate Republican who is coincidentally black, a veteran, a very nice and bright guy. It showed him 16 back. It showed him as little. It has shown lately him back as little as 5 or 6. So he's close to the variability, the predictability, the error inside the poll itself. So next, Minnesota. Al Franken, cute Al Franken, groper Al Franken, the comedian that was smarter than everybody else, resigned, leaving Tina Smith as the appointee. They're both Democrats. Tina Smith is ostensibly the Democratic incumbent because she's in place. She's being challenged by Republican Karen Housley. The polls show, again, the early polls showed Tina out by 10 or 12. It's closing. The gap is closing. I have Minnesota people that say, you know, those are not accurate at all. There are lots of Democrats voting for Republicans, and there's lots of voting coming in, but I don't have numbers on it. The next one is the Missouri race with incumbent Democrat Claire McCaskill and Republican Josh Hawley. 538 shows this one as leaning to the Democratic side. I don't think it is. A couple other polls show it as a toss-up. And Inside Elections shows it as leaning Republican. I think it's clearly Republican. The polls show a tie for all practical purposes. This is another Project Veritas hit showing McCaskill is hiding her liberal left-wing leanings to moderate voters in Missouri, the show me state, and McCaskill wasn't showing them, okay? Next race is Montana. John Tester, the Democrat incumbent who has won 2 very close races. 12 years ago, I think there was actually, they repolled it and checked it. It was within 3,000 votes. This last one, Tester played some shenanigans. I'm trying to think what the name of the guy was that ran against him, but it was really close. This time it's the state, I think it's the auditor, Rosendale, who's running against Tester. It's very close. Tester attempted to do some dirty tricks on the Libertarian, for the Libertarian to siphon votes away from the Libertarian. The Libertarian tossed the towel and said, no, if you guys are going to vote for the Republican, and tossed his interest into Rosendale. 60 or 70% of the people in Montana, I think, have already voted, so it may not make very much difference. It may make maybe 1% difference with the Libertarian. Trump has been there 3 times. He's going to be there a 4th time. There is indication that there's lots of early voting, but it's going to be very close. This is one of the toughest ones. Tell me what you think, Montanans. I'm not up there anymore. So tell me what you think. Show me what it has changed. Next, North Dakota. This is Heidi Heitkamp, the incumbent Democrat against Kevin Cramer. This one was really close until the Kavanaugh thing came up. North Dakotans, I vow to you, my dad was a native North Dakotan. I used to tease him all the time, and it worked, although he thought it was pretty funny. And they are very grounded, rational people, and when they saw Heidi doing the dance and the craziness with Dianne Feinstein, I'm going to say to you, my own judgment is that they said, no, we don't want any more of that. That's out. And they're showing it as left, or as leaning slightly Republican. Two polls show it as a toss-up. I think this one is a blowout. Okay, I think that Cramer will beat her. I will put myself on the line by at least 10 points, and I'll bet you it will be bigger than that. If I were putting money down, I'd give 10 points and keep Cramer. I think he's going to blow it out. But you guys in North Dakota, tell me. The next one is New Jersey, and this is between the slimeball, scumbag, problematic sexually and financially Robert Menendez, who was chastened by the Senate and who is running against Bob Hugin, who may have either helped himself or hurt himself by making negative comments about Trump in the last few days. The polls have closed over the last couple of months. 2-3 months ago, Menendez was 15 points ahead. It is now, or it came up this last week to be almost within the element of error of the test. But lately, it looks like Menendez has pulled out a little bit. And my question to you in New Jersey is: Hugin as close as you think as he might be? Is he within the margin of error, and did he help or hurt himself by making negative comments about Trump? Next, the Republican incumbent, Dean Heller, is hanging on. It was considered a very vulnerable Republican Senate vote. Jackie Rosen's apparently a fairly popular Democrat running against him. Rosen has led through most of the last 6 months, and it has closed, and most of the polls now show Dean Heller slightly ahead. Inside Elections calls it a toss-up. 538 calls it a toss-up, which is really interesting. Two other outfits call it a toss-up. I think Heller will win. Heller, the Nevada folks have voted, and there's more Republican early voting. It's up by, I think, 30 to 50,000. It's showing that there is a leaning toward Republican. Next, Ohio. Incumbent Democrat Sherrod Brown against Jim Renacci. I think I said that correctly, maybe this time. It has, most polls show that as likely or sure Democratic. Brown has had leads of 16 points through most of the last, since the start. That has closed in. It's down to 8 or 9 points. Whether Renacci can catch him or not, I don't know. Ohio, what do you think? I mean, Ohio is, again, I think the registration is up something like 300,000 on Republicans this last 2 years. There's lots more Republican voting, and I don't have a finger on it, but tell me what you think. The next one is number 12, Pennsylvania. It's Bob Casey against Lou Barletta. This has been a really quiet contest. This is probably the weakest of the 16. I haven't heard much about Barletta. I don't see President Trump going to Pennsylvania. Maybe he did a time or two. It looks likely Democratic. It looks like Casey holds on. Again, Pennsylvania, tell me what you think. Then you've got Tennessee with blowout BSer Bob Corker, who had to comment 4 days before the election about the inappropriateness he thought of his own party's president. What an idiot. I mean, somebody, flatten his tires or something. I'm just kidding. What an idiot. It's so nice to know he's going to be gone. So there are several polls that show this as a toss-up. 538 considers this a likely Republican win. I think this is almost a sure Republican win. Marsha Blackburn is the Republican candidate to take care to increase the value, the Republican representation in Tennessee by about 4,000%. Running against Phil Bredesen. Most of the polls show Blackburn ahead by at least 6 points. I think this is going to be close to a 10-point race. I don't think she'll outrun Kramer when he beats Heitkamp, but I think she will. She may be the second best contest here out of these hot 16. The next one is an interestingly close race with an incumbent Democrat or incumbent Republican in Texas, Ted Cruz, who should win this thing running away. I mean, he should have won this running away, which shows that he has some weakness. You know, he was the last presidential candidate to drop out when President Trump was nominated. He was a strong candidate there. Obviously, he took a beating from President Trump at times. 538, which is the liberal outfit. I don't count on 538. I'm just telling you, when it works, it's obvious, right? So 538 says this is likely Republican. This is almost clearly Republican. Cruz shows to be up 3 to 10 points. I think he wins by close to 10 points. Maybe not quite as well as Blackburn does in Tennessee, but close. And Budo, who his real name is Robert or something like that. Maybe I should come up with some kind of Mediterranean sounding name, right? Like Gregorio. There we go, Gregorio. Yeah. So next one is, forgive my little excitement here, is Wisconsin, and this is between Democrat incumbent Tammy Baldwin, who's been there for a while, against Leah Vukmir. And everybody had, including me, has had trouble saying Leah's last name. This again was a race that was 15, 16, 18% out. It's down in single digits. Whether or not Leah can catch her or not, I don't know. Again, they're showing in Wisconsin, they're showing the suburbs, the Republican-leaning suburbs, voting more heavily than Milwaukee and Madison. It may be a good and early indicator. Most of the time the Democrats are the early voters. This is a case where it may be more so that we're getting a better indication. If Leah Vukmir catches her, it will be a major coup. So, and then we've got finally West Virginia. Last but not least, folks. Last but not least, most of the polls show Joe Manchin, the incumbent Democrat that voted for Kavanaugh, that chicken runner that stood outside the Senate chambers and waited till he was safe to go inside. I mean, this is like a chicken waiting for the fox to take somebody else before he goes back into the coop, right? This is Chicken Little. Joe Manchin, buck, 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 Chicken Little. I guess he's a really popular guy in West Virginia, and he bucks against a 20-odd point win by Trump in West Virginia, a pretty Republican-leaning state, and he's a fairly popular Democrat, so I shouldn't maybe tease about him. You know, and people call me Colonel Sanders. Maybe this would be a good guy for me to broast, right? Which spices do you want on him? And he's running against Republican Patrick Morrissey. It's within the margin of error. Now, it's down into 5%. The polls, most of them show it leaning toward Manchin winning, but it could easily be one of the two minor surprises. The other one I would call Indiana. I think Mike Braun could take Donnelly, so I would pick, my quick pick is Arizona Republican, Missouri Republican, Nevada Republican, Tennessee Republican, Texas Republican, and the next shots in are Indiana, and Florida Republican. I'll take the line on that one. Indiana, and West Virginia are the next two to drop. I think Montana comes in after that as a tougher one. And then the ones like New Jersey and Michigan are behind that. Ohio and Wisconsin and Minnesota are behind that, the Midwestern states, the steel states. And I would put Pennsylvania probably last on the list. So tell me what you think. I'm going to set up comments, and I'll put my comment down, just the state. And then if you will comment about it, you're free to comment separately as well, but I'm going to comment about those 16 races and give all of you an opportunity to both focus on that race itself, to make your comments, to provide your input, and to comment about each other within that one. So let's see if this works. Thanks so much for watching. I will talk with you soon. I'm still trying to get lined up to do this on Tuesday, and I'm going to be up all night anyway, so why not play with it, huh? Thanks so much for watching. Give a thumbs up if you will. Subscribe if you haven't. Poke the little bell so that you get my notices. YouTube probably won't give them to you, but it's at least a good thing for the algorithm. Thanks so much for watching.